The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Illya Friedman.
So, Illya, episode 41.
Episode 41 is finally here.
That happened.
That's right. And we're really excited that Vanja Černjul is going to be on the show.
He's amazing, amazing, amazing. Tell our listeners a bit about his work.
Oh, my God. Vanja has shot all kinds of incredibly fantastic movies and TV series. People might remember Crazy Rich Asians. He shot that.
Little movie, kind of came and went. Nobody ever heard of it.
That's some pretty thick sarcasm you got there. That's a major touchstone movie. So also, of course, little shows like Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
So just
been around the block a little bit.
Yeah, he's done incredible stuff. So
he's read the manual.
Yeah. So Ben, I'm really excited about this interview. I did this interview actually a while ago. It's been sitting in the can. But of course, in episode 39, we had Matt Clark on, and Matt Clark had done a bunch of work with Vanja.
I think, wasn't Vanja kind of his mentor figure, or at least like somebody who helped him kind of break into a new level of what he was doing?
I think that he gives him a lot of credit for that. And Vanja is incredibly kind-hearted, really incredibly wonderful fellow, and I really enjoyed this interview, and it is one of the very first interviews that I ever did myself, without you or anyone else. So
without my expertise in asking questions and listening.
So yeah, it might not be my best interview, being like one of my very first like that, but
be kinder to yourself. You're very good at this.
Anyway, I think that we will all enjoy Vanja Černjul.
Here we go.
The Cinematography Podcast Interview.
Vanja Černjul, thank you so much for sitting down with the Cinematography Podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Vanja, people probably know your work from your hit movie, of course, Crazy Rich Asians, but then, of course, 30 Rock and tons of other television series. I first became acquainted with your work in 2005. I happened to go to the AFI Film Festival in Los Angeles, and I saw what I believe was the theatrical premiere of a movie called Risk Cutters: A Love Story. Were you there for that screening?
I was not there for the screening, but it's still one of my favorite films.
It really is a lovely movie, and I remember thinking to myself, even when it was over, and I thought to myself, that movie didn't exactly work for me. I love the premise, I love the concept, I love elements in it, but the cinematography sure was great. I remember thinking to myself, like, this is probably an extremely low-budget movie, and they did amazing work that way. So congratulations. I'm always amazed to see what people are able to do with very, very little resources, and I got the feeling on that movie, you probably didn't have many resources. So.
No, it was we were literally just like a circus going around. We didn't have very experienced crew, and it was one of those experiences that just that you remember as a great experience. I also love the film, but the experience was so valuable to me because of all the friendships, and I became a friend with the director for life.
That's fantastic. And that's kind of actually a wonderful part of this industry that I think a lot of people maybe don't, who are on the outside, don't realize that once you work on a movie with someone, in some ways it's kind of like, I don't want to minimize going to war, but it is almost like it's going through some sort of maybe minor trauma together because everyone has to be pushed, I think, a little bit outside of their comfort zones, whether because it's physically demanding to do it or maybe the hours are tough, but working on a movie has all these stresses and things involved in it, and there's almost a bonding that takes place. Maybe it's not quite Stockholm syndrome, but everyone, like, I think, that survives and likes to be around each other as a new bond or experience because you went through something that was, in some ways stressful because everyone wants to shine and to do their best. But then at the same time, the circumstances when there's no money in particular means that it's a very difficult show. So, or a very difficult job. But hey, you've gone on since then to do all kinds of other fantastic stuff. I think the next time that I noticed your name in the credits and made the connection with Wrist Cutters was 30 Rock. Mm-hmm. So, and you shot 30 Rock for a long time, didn't you? You shot a lot of 30 Rock.
I shot first season.
Mm-hmm.
I came in after episode 3, so I think episode 4 was my first episode, and it was also first TV show, first episodic that I've done. Before that, I only did one pilot for Ugly Betty, and 30 Rock for me was a very important experience because it was the first time I was working on the stage, and I was learning how to work with the production designer to make sets more efficient, because all my previous work was location based. I was doing mostly small independent films in New York, all location based in tight, small apartments and on the New York streets. So this was the first time I was able to start learning about how I can take advantage of being on the set. Also, the first time I had to work with multiple cameras, which was also a new experience for me. So I was learning a lot on that show.
How did you come to that show? If never having shot on a stage before, then this is a big program. This is an NBC broadcast, a major network show. Yeah, prime time.
It's really funny. I was, as I said, most of my work before were dark, depressing, small films. Lots of silhouettes, very dark. And you mentioned Wrist Cutters. That year at Sundance Film Festival, I had 2 films in competition: Wrist Cutters and another small film called Forgiven. And it gave me, I got a little moment there. I was getting attention, and director Richard Shepard was there with his film The Matador.
That's a great movie.
Great movie, yes, yeah. And I didn't know him, and he noticed me, and he was getting ready to shoot a big pilot in New York that year, which was a pilot for Ugly Betty, the Touchstone TV project, and he interviewed me and decided to hire me to shoot his pilot, and it was at that time the biggest project I was ever even interviewed for, and. Everybody was really against hiring somebody who doesn't have any experience with television or with a studio project. But Richard insisted on hiring me, which I'm forever grateful to him, and which was a big risk for him.
He kind of launched the new chapter of your career.
Definitely.
Because Orange is the New Black. Is it Nurse Jackie? There's been a bunch of tons of television. You've done
yes.
tons of television.
Well, I've done much more television than I ever planned to.
Okay.
My main focus was always feature film work. But at that time in New York, it was just a lot of television was interesting television was coming to the city, and I was because of the success of Ugly Betty, it turned out to be a very successful series. I didn't do the series. I only shot the pilot. I started all of a sudden getting offers for television comedy, which I never knew I would ever be able to get hired on a comedy because of all the dark work that I've done before. So that's how I got on 30 Rock.
Well, that's great because 30 Rock has a great look too, and I know that when you're working in television, and I don't think a lot of people realize this, but working in television, you have to work very, very quickly. You have to make your days, or scenes get cut and shows don't happen, and there's a lot of stresses in television. So I know that the really, really good television DPs are worth their weight in gold, and I know sometimes people are concerned about getting pigeonholed, but the people who are successful, they work a very long time. We've had some really great television DPs on our podcast, and it is in some ways the best job security though, because you can work quickly and you can work well, and people tend to love that. And I will tell you that 30 Rock, I think I watched, I know I watched all that first season. I think I watched all the seasons of it, but it's a really good look. It's a really wonderful thing that you created, and to know that you'd only done a pilot before that is kind of amazing. So, hey, well done.
Well, of course you have to work quickly in television, but I didn't at the time. it felt really luxurious to me, because my background was I was shooting films in 18 days or 21 days. It was I think.
But you're doing like a show in a week, though, right? You've got like maybe 7 days.
We had 5 days.
5 days, exactly. That's not that luxurious, though. I mean,
no, but where I was coming from at the time, it felt like I didn't feel I was under more pressure than I'm used to on independent features that I was doing at the time.
Okay, gotcha. So 30 Rock sort of starts this new chapter, and tell me what when you left that and you started doing other work. What was the decision? You wanted to do something new? You wanted a different challenge? You wanted to go back to doing some more long form work? What's next? Why did you leave 30 Rock?
Well, I was looking to it was a wonderful experience, great people, and the amazing crew, but I felt it was I had to challenge myself with different kind of work. Once we figure out the stages and everything, it felt that I can't add anything more, and I needed to challenge myself. So I was trying to get a more dramatic work, and because how people hire for your previous work, it took a little bit for me to get out of the half-hour comedy, and I did Bored to Death, I think, was the series I did after that.
That was a great series, HBO series.
It was so much fun. And
Jason Schwartzman, Ted Danson, and Zach Galifianakis, was it?
That's right.
All
and
right.
they loved the show. They loved each other. They were hanging out on the set just to be with each other. It just was the greatest atmosphere. It was also a half-hour comedy, but it was all location based
and dark. Oh, that was not a bright lit.
Exactly. So it gave me the opportunity to do some more interesting lighting and to do location work, which I always enjoyed. And each episode on Bored to Death felt like a little indie because we were moving around. We shot on all major landmarks in New York. I think it was the only show where I've done all 3 seasons from pilot to the last one myself, because it was just so much fun.
Well, that's fantastic. You've got such a long filmography. I know that you know it all off the top of your head, but there's certain things that I would like to highlight. So what I'm actually going to do right now is pull up your filmography on IMDb. We definitely need to talk about Orange Is the New Black, because in some ways you took some of the television. I mean, because that is very much a dramedy. But you took some of the television characteristics of stuff that you might do more on a stage, and you applied it to a 1 hour more dramatic format. And I'd like to say that I don't think that there's a lot of shows on television that look like Orange Is the New Black, and I think that's really cool. How did you come to that?
Thank you. It was, well, I think I did Nurse Jackie. On Nurse Jackie, I had to work with a lot of fluorescent units that were built into the set, and I learned how to control those fluorescents and how to still add some contrast and how to get an interesting look with large soft sources like that. And on Orange Is the New Black, we wanted to have a balance between a location of reality on a prison set, and also something that would be too harsh on our cast. So we insisted on building the hard ceilings over the whole set because that forced me to light the sets as I would light the location. And most of it, almost all of it, was lit either with practicals or lights coming through the windows, and that's how the look for Orange Is the New Black developed.
Yeah, very much sort of a enhanced naturalism sort of thing. Is that to be?
That's right.
I think it's a look that really serves the story, because I know there's makeup and everything else, but that show is supposed to have, I think, maybe that edge of realism. If that is that a fair criticism to say that, like, it's not supposed to be airbrushed, very slick and glossy. It has an element of that, but it's like there's an edge. There's an edge that feels like you could be in that world, and and that it's not completely a made up farcical place that is only in imagination. You could walk right into those sets and really run into those cast members.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was still important to have some control over lighting, because we had a lot of people in khaki against brown walls. So there needed to be some separation with lighting. So I think we found a nice balance.
I think so too. It's a great look. Okay, so other really sort of like big project of yours that I want to talk about is Crazy Rich Asians, because it was just such a monster hit. And did I hear recently there's a sequel being made too? Do you know if that's true? Is that
yes, we don't know exactly when, because the director Jon M has other engagements before he can join. He can start working on it, but there will definitely be a sequel.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I hope that comes around. I hope that you get to be a part of that as well too. I know that everyone is busy and always doing other stuff, but Crazy Rich Asians, how do you come to that project? How does that come about?
Well, I was fortunate to I worked on Netflix series Marco Polo. Mm-hmm. I did 2 seasons in Malaysia and other countries. We shot that very interesting experience. It was very different from anything I've done previously. Lots of action scenes, working with stunts, and it was also a massive crew. We had 2 full units. We were shooting it. One unit would be shooting episode 1, the other unit would be shooting episode 3. So it was. I don't know if it was ever done that way before. I know Game of Thrones had different units for different countries, but we were moving together with 2 full units. So I had a great experience collaborating with the other DP, French DP called Roman Lecrouba, and we just had to collaborate because it was
the show's so big.
It was a big show, and also we didn't have a pilot really, because pilot was still being shot when we were shooting episode 3. So we had to work really closely together, and it was something that could have been really a nightmare, but it turned out to be a greatest experience, because we had to learn from each other, because we were such a different DPs, and so I was learning from him, and he was learning from me. We were discussing of what we were going to do next, and that was a fantastic experience. Tim Coddington, who was a line producer on Marco Polo, got hired for Crazy Rich Asians, and he put me in touch with the director Jon M and Nina Jacobson, the producer, as somebody who has had previous experience working in Southeast Asia. I met with John over the phone, and we clicked because he was talking about how important for him it is for this film to have a different look, so it doesn't look like a typical romantic comedy. And I immediately realized how ambitious he was about this film, and I got really interested, and I was fortunate to be hired for the film.
Well, you did a great job with the look of that movie too. That movie has I would say a multitude of looks inside of it actually too. Although it is, it's definitely a comedy. The sequences that go on inside at the giant mansion and stuff, the very lavish and slow motion, and so it's highly stylized and a lot of fun. I mean, I look around. I have a tendency to do this sometimes in a darkened theater, but I look around to see how engaged everyone else is. At some point, I go like, is everyone else feeling the same way I am about this moment? And look around, and like, there's not too many movies I've been to lately where I felt like everyone was into the story. Everyone was into the story, and I felt like it was a very diverse crowd of people who went to that theater. It was not just women age 18 to 49 in that theater. There was a lot of guys in there, and I think there was a lot of people really enjoyed that movie. I mean, it hit all the quadrants, as they say. It had broad appeal, and I think that the look that you bring to that story has a lot to do with the actors and the directing and the writing and all that's important. But really, if the visuals aren't matching, or if people can't buy into it, that's a huge impediment. And it wasn't. In fact, I would say that people are more sucked into that story because of the way that it looked. And I think that there's a good reason that, I mean, you don't get to those numbers unless people are going back and seeing that movie multiple times. And people did. They went back and saw that a bunch of times. So kudos to you for that. And I'm really glad that you basically, I mean, here's the thing. The talk, at least in the circles I run in with people, was that romantic comedy was, if it wasn't dead, it was on life support. There was not a lot of romantic comedies. But that movie's bringing it back. And I think that when more of these romantic comedies start to come back, I bet you'll see other people trying to emulate the look and style that you brought forth on that. So we're not technically we're okay. We're not exactly a technical podcast, but I'd like to talk just slightly technical, if we could, about that movie for a moment, because you did something kind of unusual in that. Well, not necessarily unusual. You did something really, I'm going to say smart, because I happen to know a lot about the tech, and I know that you used Vericam Pures, or used the Vericam with the new raw recording modules, which are amazing cameras. How did you come to choose that? How did you come? I assume you probably worked with them before, maybe on Orange or on something else. It's very much against the grain. In the technical world, people say, "Oh, it's Arri," or "Oh, it's Red," but you chose Panasonic, and I know a lot about the camera system, but I'd like to hear why you did that.
Well, for me, the main reason was a dual native sensitivity that the camera has, and I discovered Vericam on when I was looking for a low light camera for the Deuce, because the Deuce was going to be shot on locations. Most of the story takes place at night, and I wanted to have the flexibility of using available light sources when possible. I heard about this camera, I tested it, and I was really blown away by the results, when you could combine so many different ISO settings that cut together seamlessly, which just allowed me some freedoms that I didn't have before. Like you don't have to be held hostage by light levels that you set up for the first shot, and then you don't have the opportunity to relight. You can change the ISO settings even inside of a single scene. And on the Deuce, I used different ISO settings all the time, and I felt when I realized how fast we are going to have to move on crazy occasions, that having this flexibility would help us. We were considering a large format, but we realized that we will only have limited time to capture all these locations in Singapore, and we spent only 3 weeks in Singapore, and we had to capture every major landmark there. So I really believe that flexibility would help us. Combined with the Hawk anamorphics, we still had a nice big anamorphic look. But the decision was mainly driven by the speed by which we had to work with.
I think you made a great choice. It's such a great looking movie. Let's jump back to the Deuce. In my experience with the Deuce, well, just from talking to other people on the show, and I could be getting myself into trouble here and saying totally the wrong thing, but we had Sonny Bear on the show, and he is behind a electronic grain technology. Mm-hmm. Do I recall correctly that the Deuce was either one of the first or one of they used this proprietary grain technology to create the look of the show? Is that
Yes. It's I was a little bit suspicious about any kind of a grain, any kind of texturizer, because
so many of them have been bad. So many of it, there's reason to be very skeptical of that.
Right.
So
I was very skeptical about any texturizer, and then but when I saw this, that it wasn't really just like a filter of the whole image. That it was really working differently in different areas of the image, and was adding depth. Actually, this technology really adds depth to the image.
It became part of the aesthetic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Before the Deuce, I was very skeptical of any texturizers, because they all felt just like a filter and a bad simulation of film texture. But with live grain, it was a completely new technology, and it actually adds a depth to the image by adding different kind of texture to the highlights, and different kind of texture to the shadows.
Like film.
like film. Yeah. And I think we're only at the beginning of realizing what we can do with this tool, because bringing the texture back as a part of another mean of expression for us that we lost when we moved to digital. Cinematographers used to expose film differently if they wanted different texture, and that was just part of the creative decisions that we were making. And once we moved to digital, basically every camera pretty much looked the same.
Yeah, that's true.
And but now with this technology, I think we have the opportunity to start exploring texture again. And now we can go beyond, I think, just simulating film texture. I think this tool allows us to do much more with the texture and really make it part of the storytelling decisions.
Yeah, I believe when we spoke with Sunny, he was saying that this allows us to have textures not that just emulate film, but textures for film stocks that have never existed, which is kind of fun, that you can kind of create your own film grain, and not the simulation, but actual like an algorithm that reproduces or creates grain in the quantities and sizes that you desire. And I know I'm going down the rabbit hole and probably just lost like 80% of our audience, but really what we're talking about, I'll just back up a sec, is that maybe subtle, maybe not so subtle texture that film had that was a very different sort of aesthetical experience than watching what a lot of people consider very clean, very digital sort of look. Film is photochemical. Film, I hate to use the word organic, but it's non-repeating. You don't get to see the same pattern over and over again. It is 100% original, and I know that the live grain does something similar in that you can basically embed every single frame to have a unique texture that is not repeated, which is incredible. So,
right.
So the Deuce, you got a lot of accolades for that too. A lot of people talked about the look of simulating something that's supposed to take place in the 1970s. Clearly not shot in the 1970s, but has a very convincing sort of retro feel, but also modern and with a lot of texture. I mean, I know this is a little bit more sort of the style or mood of some of the other stuff that you've done, but what did you want to create for that show? And I assume that was probably in collaboration with the directors and with other people and what they wanted, but how does the look of the Deuce come about?
So with the Deuce, one of the early decisions was how to approach the creation of recreation of 70s New York City. And some early ideas were trying to go about it as try to make it look like a found footage, something that was shot in the 70s on 16mm film and was lit like you had to light for a film of that time. I thought it would maybe be more interesting rather than simulate the look of the films from the 70s, to try to find a look that looked like the 70s. And that approach required to be very, very true to the light sources that would be around on those locations at the time and the color of those light sources. So that was the basis for me. And since I had a camera that was super sensitive, I could really use some of the original fixtures from the 70s. We used real neon signs.
Wow, that's great.
From that era, which you can imagine were very temperamental and hard to control. But I thought it was worth it. That was the basic approach.
It certainly is it certainly got a lot of attention for its look, and the 1970s has been sort of popular and in vogue in the last 10 years. But I will say that I don't think most other 1970s styled stuff captures what it felt like to be the 1970s versus going after that look of, hey, it's what movies looked like in the 1970s. Right. So I think that was a very wise choice. What's next for you? Do you have something that you're going on to right now? What's your next project?
I'm not sure yet. I'm looking into several different projects. But probably nothing before the spring next year.
Taking a break then, and enjoying Camera Image, which is where we're at right now. We're in Poland. Have you been to this festival before? What do you think?
I've been here twice before. It was always a short trip, just 2 days, 3 days stop. This time I'm staying a little longer, and I'm really enjoying meeting other DPs and the conversation. It's really unique experience. And I'm having a great time. It
really isn't like anywhere else. I think that it's pretty amazing that we get to have this experience and bump into so many different people, because being a cinematographer is sometimes a very I won't say lonely, but very solo career. You don't it's wonderful when you do like the Marco Polos and you get to work with other great people you can collaborate, but usually when the credits go by you only see one director of photography on a project, and this kind of gives you a way to, in a very casual setting, to run into a whole lot of other people whose work you may have seen over the years, and maybe not met. Anyone here that you've enjoyed running into?
Yes, well, many people. I can't really
single one out.
But it was really great to be able to talk to people not only about the art and craft of what we do and movies that we've shot, but also about life and the challenges of being a cinematographer and how it affects your life, and just have intimate conversations with other people who have similar experiences.
I agree completely. That is something that people don't necessarily realize what comes along with the job. And I know that Haskell Wexler, he used to say that this industry cost him three marriages. So it's a lot of work and a lot of time away. But the only way you really get to know other people and what other people are going through, I think, is to connect with them. And this has been a good experience for that. So I think that's a great place to leave it right there. And this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find you?
I have just recently opened an Instagram account, and because I just like to be able to share the pictures of the places that I travel to. I travel a lot, and sometimes I travel alone, and it's just a way of me to when you see something amazing and you want to share it with somebody. So it's a lot of it's like a travelogue.
Fun.
I'm also using a Facebook account like Instagram. It's mostly pictures or interesting articles about cinematography.
Nice. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, so that was Vanja Černjul. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vanja. It was so much fun.
We should have you back.
Definitely.
We say that literally to everybody.
But you know what? We're going to make it happen. All these people who did the show, guess what? We're gonna call them again.
They're just going to keep making movies and TV stuff, and eventually we are going to hey, you've developed you went off and had a whole series of adventures.
Well, if we do that too, we can start to talk to people maybe just about one thing. Like there's some other shows out there. Actually, there's another podcast out there about filmmaking, which I notice has decided to copy Alana Cody's Instagram and posting style, which I thought was really awesome. So I was like, hey, we're being influential to some other shows, which is cool.
Sweet. So Illya, you know what time it is now?
Bill paying time.
Let's pay those bills.
The way we're going to pay the bills today for our wonderful sponsor, Airy, is to talk about something actually they just posted on their website, which is a wonderful story about the capturing of a stunning solar eclipse in Chile with the Alexa LF camera.
Mm-hmm. LF stands for Larry Fong.
Yeah. That's what Larry Fong says, but it is large format.
Got it.
And it's a really, really great story because, of course, how difficult is it to shoot straight into an eclipse? And they did this for a narrative project. And it's really amazing. And it's called Nomad. And they kind of go through, it's a love story. It plays out on 7 continents. And really, there's some technical stuff about the camera and the signature prime lenses and all the ways that they went about preparing for and shooting and exposing for this actual eclipse that's happening. And it's just spectacular. And if anyone would like to see it, it's on the Airy Instagram as well as on their website.
I'm going to check that out. That sounds really cool.
Totally check that out. It's worth a read and a watch.
And now, short ends.
So, Illya, what is your short end for the week?
My short end's interesting. Okay, by the time that people hear this, it's going to be Shark Week. And I got to give a shout out to a good...
Not to be confused with Shart Week. Go on.
What? No.
It's just a week. It's a week where you fart until you shit in your pants.
Oh, you really, really are pushing this whole explicit content thing.
Sorry.
Ben,
it's all good. Anyway.
Come on, I don't mind cheap shots, but that cheap shot is really cheap.
I've been making this Shark Week joke for 15 years.
Okay, so Shark Week, which I talked to someone recently, they said that's the only reason they still have cable is that they look forward every year to Shark Week, and I understand it. There are some networks out there that they build their lineup around special programming like this.
Interesting.
And actually, a good friend of our show, Rob Henry, he edits a lot of Shark Week content, and I know they have 18 shark documentaries that are all going to be coming out. So
I'm really glad that we have this fascination with sharks, but isn't it time to switch to piranha or giant squid or something?
Production company, The Asylum, has produced I don't even know how many shark-based movies.
They're documentaries about tornadoes that bring sharks around. It's a true story.
I think
they seem to attack has-been actors mostly, or musicians.
I will tell you though, the thing about sharks is it gets into the psyche. I think that Jaws and Steven Spielberg are owed some credit for this, but yeah, there's a fascination with sharks that runs really deep through the society. So anyway, I
won't say sharks aren't fascinating. I'm just like, man, oh man, how long can we milk the shark?
Oh, it turns out there's still a Shark Week every year. So
Yeah.
who knows? The other thing that's happening right now is the Emmy nominations just came out, and some of
Speaking of Shark Week,
exactly. But some of your favorite stuff and some of my favorite stuff received Emmy noms, and
Sweet.
of course that's coming up in September. So we'll get to see who wins. But I know that Game of Thrones broke all kinds of records, like 32 nominations or something like that,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. And we'll see what happens, because
Barry too, right?
Barry got a lot of HBO did very well, but also shows like Ozark on Netflix did extremely well.
Great show.
Great show, and I know that's coming back, and I'm super looking forward to it. Also, Better Call Saul,
That show, man, Better Call Saul is such a gem, and it's crazy to think that it's spun off of Breaking Bad, which I think was one of the best TV series ever made, and then Better Call Saul in a lot of ways is every bit as good and kind of a deeper show. It's crazy.
I am delighted to call them clients of Hot Rod Cameras. They actually buy stuff from us. So
and we even had like a shout out from Bob Odenkirk, right? Didn't we have a video?
We did, yeah. Bob Odenkirk actually was on a video portion of the show, which you can watch right now if you go to the Cinematography Podcast channel on YouTube. It's just one of a few little short things on there. But yeah, we have a little thing. Maybe we'll do more if some more people start watching.
And I'm not saying any of this because Bob Odenkirk gave us a shout out. I think Better Call Saul is one of the best shows on television, and I feel like if it was described to me, I don't know that I would be like outrageously compelled to watch it, and yet like I can't stop watching it when a season is going.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And Bob Odenkirk as a performer just kills it every time.
Michael McKean, so great on the show. Bob Odenkirk, so great on the show. Like that whole cast.
Total side trip. I watched the Neil Gaiman series on Amazon Prime of Good Omens. Michael McKean is friggin' amazing in that. When did Michael McKean become like the best actor who ever lived?
Are you kidding? He's been the best actor
I
for.
know. He's so good.
Maybe Laverne and Shirley. Maybe then. Yeah. So he's huge fan. If Michael McKean, if you actually listen to this, we'd love to have you on. I'd love to talk to you about cinematography and all the stuff you've done.
I bet he knows a lot about cinematography. He strikes me as that kind of person.
Absolutely, 100%.
Best buddies with Christopher Guest.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, star of and co-star of many of his movies, tons of his stuff.
Which were shot by Roberto Schaefer.
Of course, many of them were. So yeah, also
guest of the show.
So, fantastic guest.
So we just Kevin Baconed the shit out of that.
We did. Our 6 degrees of separation became 1 degree.
Awesome.
So, all right. So Ben, what's your short end?
My short end is okay. So maybe 10 years or so ago, I started getting into Adobe After Effects, and it was less than 10 years ago. It was when Gareth Edwards' movie Monsters came out. And I saw like, okay. Here's a guy who was able to do all his own visual effects, and I'm not necessarily that guy. Around that time, I met
Kays is.
Kays Alatracci, our composer, totally is. Around that time, I met a dude named Matthew Santoro when I was working on the Dark Tower development for Imagine, and Matthew is the same thing. He's a director who does a lot of VFX, and I'm like, God damn it, I have to learn VFX. So I started learning VFX.
I like the way you said that too. God damn it!
It was something I always thought VFX are something that I'm going to farm out to the nerds in nerd country to do.
You do not have to know this skill. You're gonna have someone else.
I'm going to be a director, and then like eventually I was hornswoggled into being an editor and a director, and then it's like it's more and more jobs. So around that time, I discovered something which I believe already was one of my short ends. A thing called Video Copilot.
Sure.
And they had a collection called Action Essentials that were at the time very high res 2K assets. When 2K was like, oh man, am I ever going to need a 2K asset?
You might still need
and
it.
So they were smoke and fog and bullet hits and blood and water and like all these elements that you might incorporate creatively. Okay, so they released that, I don't know how long ago. It was probably like 2010 or so. So now there's another company called Action VFX. If you go to actionvfx.com, you can find them.
And not sponsoring of the show.
They're not a sponsor. I don't know them. I don't know anything about them, but I have watched a bunch of their videos. So what they kind of did was take, I don't know that they did it this consciously. They took every element of Action Essentials and then a few other elements and blew it up. Now, the collections are kind of expensive, but they do outrageously specific stuff with fire and explosions and blood and basically you can create all kinds of amazing stuff. And a lot of times you go like, okay, like does this stuff get used in real stuff? So there's a horror movie that came out kind of recently called Ma.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen it, but apparently a house gets burned down and I was watching their. Because I check out their stuff. I get their emails, and they had like a reel of stuff from Ma that used their fire effects, and their fire effects are pretty amazing.
I'm on their website right now, and I can concur with everything you were saying. They look like they kick serious butt.
Yeah, well, and they're all like, they're not, I'm sure some of them incorporate some CGI, but I think most of them are a real element. So like they do a real explosion and then they key it out so that you just kind of have a pre-keyed explosion element that you can drop in. And it's like, it's not a replacement for being a good filmmaker, but it is like, if you've ever been on a set and you had to light something on fire, or you've ever been on a set and you had to fire a blank gun.
Danger.
They're dangerous.
Yeah.
There are safety elements. There are safety meetings you're going to have. I mean, honestly,
if you're on a real production,
the muzzle flashes alone are worth it with any of the collections. And there's several collections. I mean, honestly, in the Action Essentials from Video Copilot, they have some really good muzzle flashes. But it's like on a set, if you have an armorer and you bring out a blank gun and you're going to do a shot that involves firing a blank, you've just kissed away 20 to 30 minutes of your day. Yeah. To planning it out and safety meetings and handing out earplugs.
A little bit of an expense too, I'm guessing.
For sure. Well, it's a separate person. Whereas like when I worked on Chosen for Sony, Crackle rather, like we just used airsoft guns, so you don't need an armorer. These guns aren't shooting anything. They just expend a little bit of CO2, so there's a little bit of kickback, but they're extremely safe to work with, and you can run with them all day, and you basically just need props people to handle them because you're not like a blank. If I put a blank,
it's a whole different thing.
If I put a blank on at you and shoot, you can be injured or killed. People have been killed by blanks. So anyway, I would recommend checking out Action VFX. Honestly, check out Video Copilot's Action Essentials. There are a number of companies that do these kinds of things, but Action VFX, I've watched literally every one of their. I've watched the sample chapters of every one that they do, and just because I love that kind of stuff. And even if you're going to do like a real blood element on set or a real smoke element or a real fire element, it's always nice to know that you can add more later. Stuff like that really enables it, and check them out.
Cool. Well, Ben, we've reached that famed end of show.
Is it famed?
It's super famed. This is when people generally, I think, are turning us off. So
bye everybody. Here's some credits.
Hey, let's thank all our amazing team. For people who are listening.
Let's thank our amazing producer Alana Cody, without whom nothing happens.
That's right.
Let's thank our two editors, Ben and Abby.
Ben and Abby, editors extraordinaire. Thank you so much.
Let's thank, as always, Kays Alatrakshi, who has listened to probably not a single episode, but it's only because he's been doing VFX and color grading and like basically doing the work of everyone who we've ever had on here.
Yeah, he's also producing a feature right now in another state somewhere.
Guy keeps the lights on.
Yeah.
But check him out at musicbykays.com and maybe hire him to compose a score for you. He's awesome. He did all the music you've heard on the show. So Illya, where can people find you?
They can find me over at Hot Rod Cameras. And if you come down here and say that you're a fan of the show, while supplies last, there might be a free t-shirt for you.
Do it. And even if there isn't a free t-shirt, you probably have some kind of swag up.
Usually, if not from us, from some other people. I know that Sigma dropped off a bunch of cool notebooks the other day. So,
I want a Sigma notebook.
Play your cards right. Maybe there's a Sigma notebook in your future here. So,
man, sweet. So people can find me at benrockonline.com, and I'm on the Twitter and the Instagrams and the Facebooks and all that stuff. And some people who listen to it have reached out to me, and I look forward to talking to each and every one of you.
Please like and subscribe. Did you know we're on Instagram? Did you know we're on Facebook? Please go do those things and share this podcast with your friends. It will really, really help us. And write a review on iTunes.
Nothing helps more than writing a review on iTunes.
Review on iTunes is huge. And it convinces our sponsors that what we're doing here is worthwhile. So at the very least, help us help you make more great content by helping
We have some
us.
Really amazing cinematographers coming up.
Ooh, we sure do. I'm so excited. And even a director or two.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
All right. Until then,
see you in episode 42.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.